Minimize your problems. The first prerequisite of living a happy, successful, and well-balanced life is to be in absolute harmony with everybody and everything at all times. This, of course, will mean letting others have their own way for the time being, or until your own sense of harmony has so grown that they will willingly follow and cooperate with you. It will also mean an utter disregard of the appearances in your life and in the lives of others. It will mean an expansion of faith in the good and a dropping away of the belief in evil. When Jesus said, "Judge not according to appearance, but judge righteous judgment," he meant that we were to take our attention, or conscious thinking, off what seems to be, and place it upon what actually is, the truth. One is expanding evil and the other is expanding good. One is seeing with the outer eye, the other is beholding the finished kingdom. One is siding with evil, the other is stripping evil of its power. Since it is a law of mind that we give life and momentum to that which we think about, then we shall arrest the progress of evil by giving it as small room as possible in our thought. In other words, we shall take away the substance that brought it into existence and has been holding it in thought. When symptoms of evil situations appear, instead of nourishing them by thinking about them and reaching emotionally to them, we need to assume toward them an attitude of divine indifference and to turn our attention toward God. We then shall look upon each evil pattern as a mere trifle that soon will disappear. We shall say to each one as it comes, "This too shall pass away." Then we shall dismiss the evil from our minds and keep dismissing it until it has spent its power. In many instances, says Christian D. Larson, disease is a result of inharmonious conditions in the body, and all that is necessary to remove both disease and its cause is to restore harmony. It can truthfully be said that fully 20% of the ordinary ailments of life would entirely disappear if perfect harmony were restored to mind and body. Realizing this, we must not permit ourselves to develop any fear of discord. The fear of discord is worse than the discord itself. We should therefore ignore all these conditions completely. We should ignore these conditions not only because they produce weakness in mind and body, but because they bring many and serious ills. We should train ourselves by expanding our consciousness of God to be bigger than our symptoms and stronger than appearances. How shall we do that? By withholding our thoughts from evil, meeting it without feeling, and by giving it to God. "Look upon me, and be ye saved, all the ends of the earth." By looking away from evil, making it of no import in our thought, and looking unto God, we contract or disintegrate the pattern of evil and enlarge, magnify the power of good. What is that to thee? Have you ever really answered that question? What is that to thee? What is the symptom of an evil situation that has been troubling you? Are you going to make something out of it? Does it mean something to you? Are you storing up energy in it with your thoughts? Are you giving it momentum through your fear? Are you making it so big through your attention that it is filling your whole consciousness? If so, then it is your problem, and you will have to work it out yourself. What is that to thee? Follow thou me. Haven't you heard that an evil condition can function only so long as its energy lasts, and that when attention is taken away from it, the energy has been cut off and the evil weakens and dies? Where is your God at such times? He is right there awaiting your recognition. If you make your bed in hell, I am there. He says, in effect, I am wherever you are and wherever your evil seems to be. I am in everything and am everywhere at the same time. What does a caterpillar do when it leaves the chrysalis? It does not go anywhere. It is absorbed in the butterfly. Where does evil go when you judge righteous judgment? It does not go anywhere. It is absorbed into the good. When St. Paul said, "None of these things move me," he immediately withdrew from the place of the seeming into the place of reality, from that which seems to be to that which is. Judging righteous judgment is not praying a certain way, thinking a certain way, or breathing a certain way, but it is the total destruction of that which seems to be. It is lifting the thoughts to God and being unmoved by the things it appears. Then the appearances, no matter how terrible they may be, are terminated. The last vestige of power has been taken from them, and they begin to weaken, wither, and die. The feeling is gone. The air is out of the balloon. The thought structure that kept them in place has collapsed. The unexpected has happened. The evil has disappeared. Where a man's consciousness goes, everything else automatically goes with it. His estate goes into court and is soon divided. His body disintegrates. His worldly possessions soon are scattered to the four corners of the earth. Why? Because there is no longer anything to hold them together. When the consciousness is gone, then everything else has gone with it. That is why we say that life is a state of consciousness. It is the state of a man's being and his power of possession. It is everything he has, is, or hopes to be. It is that which holds them together and enables him to function as a unit. It would, therefore, be folly to try to remove evil condition in a man's body or affair so long as he holds the mental equivalent of those conditions in his consciousness. The drunkard, for instance, may be changed temporarily, but until his consciousness has been changed, he will subject to the same old appetite at any time. When the consciousness is changed, however, the appetite will change with it. Both the desire for liquor and the capacity to become intoxicated will have disappeared. Behold, Christ's consciousness, makes all things new. To get away from evil manifestations, false appetites, inhibitions, and the like, we must have a new state of consciousness. We must have a new relationship to God. Ye must be born again. Old things are passed away. Behold, all things are become new. Jesus made it clear that evil conditions could not be changed from the outside. Of my own self, he said, I can do nothing. The Father within, he doeth the work. He did not counsel men to change the effects, but to change the cause, to judge righteous judgment. Knowing that as long as the belief of a particular ailment remained, the body would continue to express or outpicture it, he also knew that any effort to change the outer condition was a waste of time. It is the new that makes life thrilling and interesting, and to get the new we must have Christ. We must get rid of old limitations and old beliefs. We must think larger thoughts and see larger vistas. We must expand our consciousness and put the mind in touch with all existence. To get rid of present limitations, we must set the mind free. You have dwelt long enough in this mountain. Our world is in a constant state of flux and change. Nothing stands still but man's thought and belief. No sooner do women adapt one style of hat and dress than they have thrown them away for others. Ox carts and prairie schooners give way to horses and buggies. Horses and buggies give way to automobiles and airplanes. Candles are changed for kerosene lamps, and kerosene lamps are exchanged for electric lights. Old homes are exchanged for new ones. Old books are discarded for better ones. To live in a world like ours means change, and the faster we change, the more alive we become. Life is perpendicular, and those who do not climb are thrown into a discard. We must sink or swim. It is change or perish. Life calls, and we must answer. Come over in Macedonia and help us. Put your feet into the water and go forward. Leave the place where you are. Strike your tents and seek new heights, ye who dwelt long enough in the mountains. The most difficult people to heal are those who refuse to change. That is why Jesus tells us that he has not come to bring peace, but a sword. It takes a sword oftentimes to jar some people out of their negativeness, their passivity and self-content. They want something better, but they are unwilling to change themselves to get it. Awake thou that sleepest, arise from the dead, and Christ shall give thee light. There is a disease born of stagnation and self-complacency which is called arrested development. Those who have this disease are the people who have stopped growing, stopped climbing, stopped making progress. They are only as well as they think they can be, and they do not try to become better. They are only as successful as they think they can be, and they do not try to improve. They think they are as wise as they can be, and they do not try to grow wiser. They think they are as high up the hill as they can go, and they do not try to climb higher. These people do not respond to ordinary treatment, so God brings a sword to stab them in the awareness of their higher possibilities, that he may give them what they need. One of the most striking and beautiful stories in the Old Testament is the one which compares God's watchfulness over his people to the mother eagle's care for the young. For the Lord's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness. He led him about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, fluttereth over her young, spreadeth broad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So Lord alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. But why does the mother eagle stir up the nest? Why does she expose their tender bodies to the thorn? Why does she push them out of their uncomfortable home into space? Is it because she wants to destroy them on the jagged rocks below? No, not at all. Eaglets were not made for stagnation in a downy nest of ease. They were made for flight. They were made for the heavens and for the stratosphere. And that is the reason St. Paul tells us to stir up the gift that is within us. And that is why he said, seek those things which are above. We too were made for the higher realms, and we were live but half-lives until we find them. Then what will you do when the Lord awakens you? Will you rub your eyes and go back to sleep, or will you be about the Father's business? Will you take 40 winks more, or will you take your place in heaven? God has put this book in your hands to wake you up. to awaken you to the realization of your highest possibility and to help you get what you need. It is an alarm clock, however. It will wake you, but it cannot get you out of bed. Whether it succeeds or fails will depend entirely upon you, whether you get up or go back to sleep. When Isaiah said, "Arise, shine, for thy light has come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon them," he was telling us that was as far as God could go. The getting up depends upon us, upon our willingness to follow him and to make our lives like his life. The trouble with most inactive souls is that their failure to realize that they were brought into this world to fill a definite place. They feel an inner urge to move upward and forward, but they fail to obey it. They become restless or apathetic. While they have an inborn feeling that they would do what they want to do and obtain anything they desire, they do not let themselves go. They have the inner conviction that they could have greater blessings and richer possessions, but they lack the determination and faith that would move them toward the objects they seek. It is easier to burn candles, say prayers, read psalms, sing hymns, and chant creeds, with no attempt to relate religion to life or faith to work. Freedom is not a matter of worship, but of conduct. Religion is not a matter of form, but of force. If we do not know the truth, then it cannot set us free. If we do not get up to God, then God cannot get down to us. We emphasize worship more than conduct, study more than practice, because it is less difficult. Our prayers are hollow, meaningless, tinkling cymbals because we lack power, because they have no root. Our desires are unfulfilled because we have made no contact with God. Our days are full of trouble because we are willing to live unmastered lives. We want liberty without law, without a master, and we end up in a far country. The philosopher says, "Express yourself," but never raises the question as to whether we have a self worth expressing. The laws that guide man, like the laws that guide the stars, are immutable, eternal, and changeless. The Decalogue and the arithmetic table will never be improved. Disregard these laws and they will break you. Conform to them and they will make you. An unmastered life, like an unmastered ship, will end in disaster. Being free to do what it wants to do, it is free to do nothing. It never reaches port. Just as there are natural laws which govern the materialistic world, so there are mental and spiritual laws that govern the conduct of man, endowed with self-choice and free will. The Bible is a textbook on the science of living and thinking, just as we have textbooks on aeronautics, algebra, and chemistry. Textbooks do not represent the final word in science, but only the sum total of the information known in a given field. The Romans were masters in civil law, the Greeks in philosophical and aesthetic law, and the Hebrews in codifying moral and spiritual law. We find the laws of the Hebrews summed up in the 20th chapter of Exodus, the 10 Commandments, given to Moses by God on Mount Sinai. Now let us consider these 10 Commandments in the light of modern psychology and metaphysics and see what they mean to us. "I am the Lord thy God. Thou shalt have none other gods but me." This law sets forth the priority of God. God is the one and only presence and power in our lives, and to give power to any but him is to cut yourself off from his good. He is the absolute, unconditional power, which nothing can limit. Principle or God is the absolute, and insofar as any individual can actually induce within consciousness, upon principle, a definite concrete acceptance of his desire, it will manifest, even if every thought on earth had to change to compel it. Everything begins with God as first cause, and everything ends with God. He is Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. He is the answer to every problem and the fulfillment of every need. This commandment means, then, that we shall put him first in all our thoughts, desires, prayers, calculations, and plans, and that we shall remove from our consciousness all obstructions and hindrance to the inflow of divine plenty into our lives. We shall do this by refusing to talk, think, or read about things that are negative or destructive. Jesus said, "I and the Father are one." When we harmonize our minds with his mind, then we can reenact the divine nature. We stop being John Doe and become one with Christ. We reenact the divine nature by holding to and embodying within ourselves only the good, by knowing and accepting nothing but the presence and power of God in every person, place, situation, and thing. "Thou shalt not make to thyself any graven thing. Thou shalt not bow down to them, nor worship them." This commandment is a sort of extension of the first one. It means simply that God can have no rivals, and he will not tolerate divided loyalties. The idols mentioned refer, of course, to anything material or human, which may hold the center of our consciousness or affection. These may be friends, loved ones, children, material possessions, riches, problems, or difficulties. It has to do with anything on earth which we may give supreme place in our minds or hearts, or go which we may ascribe power. Since God is first cause, we cannot put anything less than Him first. It also means that we cannot look to outside sources or agencies for help, guidance, or salvation. We must keep our minds open to Him and closed to all else. God is the goodness of the good. When we trust Him absolutely and allow Him nothing but Him to have power over us, then we shall prove the divine sufficiency in all things. Thou shalt not take the name of the Lord thy God in vain. The third commandment forbids cursing, jokes about sacred things, irreverence, and all negative and destructive attitudes toward life. It is a law of reverence, and it concerns the sanctity of the name of God. The word name means nature, and to the old Hebrews the name of a person indicated the nature of the person. Thus to curse the name of God was to curse God Himself. Jesus said, To this end was I born, and for this cause came I into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. If God called His creation good, then man is forbidden to call it bad. No matter what it may seem to be on the surface, we must see it, think of it, and speak of it as good. Since God is spirit, and man is made in His image and likeness, then man must think of himself and others as he is in God, as a spiritual being. He must hold the spiritual, positive attitude toward life at all times. It is not enough to say that we are sons of God. We also must recognize ourselves to be one with Him. To keep this commandment, then, we must shut ourselves off from all negation and speak only good of everybody and everything. To live in harmony with spiritual law, we must speak the absolute truth and never give expression to anything else. Remember that thou keep holy the Sabbath day. God has set aside 1 day a week for inspiration, relaxation, and rest, and commands us to keep it holy. This means that we must not do any unnecessary work, buy or sell, or stay away from church, nor turn Sunday into a day of worldly pleasures. Just as we feed and recharge the physical man 6 days a week, so the spiritual man, if he is to grow, must be fed on Sunday. The sanctity of God's day is vital to health and all successive living. It cannot be desecrated without serious consequence. It is an absolute necessity that we have 1 full day a week in which to renew ourselves in truth and to restore the damage done by the wear and tear of the other 6. Dwight Moody once said, If you give up the Sabbath, the church goes. If you give up the church, the home goes. And if the home goes, the nation goes. That is the direction in which we are traveling. It is important, therefore, that we set aside 1 day each week for communion with God and relaxation from all cares, worries, inhibitions, and fears, and from all unnecessary tasks. It is one way in which we give God an opportunity to straighten out our difficulties and to work in our behalf. To keep the Sabbath day holy, we must seek to know, to rest in the universal rhythm that controls all motion and prevents stagnation, and adds grace and beauty to all that God has created. Enter into the harmony of living, and you will decrease the wear and tear upon your body cells. Relaxation of the personality is really an evidence of faith and trust. The man who believes absolutely in God, in the divine reliability and goodness, does not hold himself mentally and spiritually rigid, fearful at any moment something is going to happen to him, but on the contrary, rests in complete confidence that all things work together for good to them who believe in God. As a result, he has peace in his mind and quietness at the center of his life. This relaxed and peaceful state of mind gives him a clear brain, makes possible the clear exercise of all his faculties, and thus he is able to attack his problems with every ounce of ability he possesses. The relaxed man is the powerful man. The rigid, tied-up personality is defeated before the battle starts. Faith is the answer. Blanton and Peel. Honor thy father and thy mother. The 5th commandment relates to the sanctity of the family. The honor called for here refers not alone to parents and those in authority over us, but obedience to God our Father and to the Church our Mother. Someone has said that the most difficult place in the world to be a Christian is in the home. If that is true, then the answer to such a problem is to be found in a more adequate corporate religious life. More consideration for one another, more cooperation, a more devotional life, more respect for parents, more love and more understanding. Where there is little respect for parents, there is little respect for God. Jesus called us friends. What a tribute. If parents and children, brothers and sisters could be friends as well as relatives, it would not only strengthen and spiritualize the home, but the nation as well. Interpreted metaphysically, this commandment means that we must accept the love of God and take our place in the divine plan as the Son, our perfect expression of divine love. and that we be obedient to the law of love at all times, in all places, and under all circumstance. The parable of the prodigal son is in reality an illustration of the relationship between the individual and his parent God. However far a man may wander or separate himself from true goodness, the way back always is through obedience or conformity to the law of love. When we turn from absorption in self and center ourselves in God, we are restored as honored guests in the Father's house. Thou shalt do no murder. This commandment has to do with the sanctity of life and forbids anger in every form, thought, word, and deed. To murder means to kill, to cut off, to separate from life. Jesus said, "It is written that thou shalt not kill. But I say unto you that whosoever is angry with his brother hath committed murder in his heart already." In this statement, Jesus again is taking man back to the source of all his troubles, his thinking. If there were no murderous thoughts, there would be no murder. If there were no angry thoughts, there would be no fatal blows. To realize the importance of this announcement as touching human conduct, we only need recount the crimes of anger that fill our prisons. The good positions lost because of temper, careers crippled by uncontrolled passion, the grief that has been caused by violent quarrel, families broken up by storms of rage, nerves shattered by temporary madness, hearts weakened by fretting, scolding, and fuming, the terrible havoc that has been created by maleficent bitterness and hatred. It is a well-known fact that a violent fit of temper or anger many times will not only reverse the mental and physical process of the mind and body, stop the action of the heart and produce apoplexy, but will wrench and rack the delicate nervous system and vitiate the blood as no other passion can do. It is a temporary insanity or an emotional tornado which does more permanent damage and more irreparable injury to the entire mental and physical being than any other thing. The antidote for anger is love, peace, and self-control. Shakespeare said, "Assume a virtue if you have it not," and Emerson in effect said, "Assume as already yours the virtue you would like to have. Appropriate it, enter into the part, live the character just as does the great actor absorbed in the character he plays." Regardless of how great your capacity for anger and bad temper may be, refuse to express it. Instead, assume the virtue of love. When tempted to fly to pieces over some provocative act, just assume the calm, quiet, deliberate, balanced composure which characterizes the Son of God, and repeat to yourself the words, "God in me maintains the harmony of my being." Thou shalt not commit adultery. To most people, the seventh commandment refers only to the sacredness of sex and to the marriage of divorced persons, if the other still is living, etc., but it means much more than that. It also forbids impurity in every form, particularly in thought, immodesty, immoderation, excess, overeating, drinking, and laziness. Adultery peculiarity is a sin of an adult. An adulterer is anyone who sees double and makes things appear different than they are. He loses the original state of a thing by making something else out of it. The adult is double-minded, while the child is single-minded. The adult sees both good and evil. The child sees only good. The child sees and accepts the truth, while the adult, believing in two powers and two presences, adulterates his consciousness of the truth. He sees and hears the truth, but to him it doesn't seem to be truth. The truth is there, but he does not recognize it because of his double-mindedness. We have pure food laws today which say, "Thou shalt not commit adultery," because adulteration immediately creates something else than intended by law, another substance. The original is lost, submerged as when the man puts sand into sugar. It is no longer in sugar, though still is sugar content. In order to restore the sugar to its original state, it would need to be purified by sifting out the sand, and so it is with our minds. To keep this commandment, then, we must be obedient not alone to the laws of sex and marriage, but we must also cleanse our minds of all impure thoughts and of all sense of duality. We must come to that place where we know that God is the only presence and power in our lives, and where there is none else beside him. Jesus said, "Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God." The pure in heart are those whose vision is one-pointed. They are those who know God to the exclusion of all else, who live in his presence here and now, without any mixture of belief in his absence. "It is written," said Jesus, "that thou shalt not commit adultery. But I say unto you that whosoever looketh at a woman to lust after her hath committed the act already." If there were no adulterous thoughts, there would be no adultery. "Thou shalt not steal." When one hears this commandment read, he usually dismisses it with a thought that it does not apply to him. He thinks of it more as law governing habitual thieves and those who steal from others. It means that, of course, but much more. In the church we speak of this commandment as the law of the sacredness of property, but it also forbids gambling, cheating, copying, dishonesty of every kind, and it includes withholding our money from God, and acquiring physical and material blessing by other means than by right of consciousness. Though wisdom is a house builded, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge shall the chambers be filled with all precious and pleasant riches, since the basis of all attraction and permanence of possession is in consciousness, then anything that is acquired by any other means, whether it be health, money, or property, will only be temporary. It will remain with us only until some superior force takes it away. There is just compensation for every possession, and without the compensation, the possession cannot last. The source of our supply is inscribed on our American money. In God we trust, but we trust the money rather than the source. We forget the source and so live in uncertainty and fear. We withhold from Him who provides and so shut off our supply. We shut it off by taking from God that rightfully is His. We break our contact with creative power by withholding the tithe. The law of tithing is the law of sowing and reaping. Where there is a definite contact preserved between cause and effect, the effect is supported and perpetuated. If a break in the process occurs, the effects must diminish accordingly. When the prodigal son separated his inheritance from the father, it soon dissipated itself. The law is to perpetuate and amplify whatever is allowed to act upon. Tithing preserves this contact, and withholding breaks it. Let us therefore keep this contact by returning to God that which belongs to Him as a source of all, that we are and have. Thou shalt not bear false witness. The ninth law deals with the sacredness of our word and commands truthfulness. It also forbids lies about ourselves and others, gossip, false excuses, and every kind of pretense. Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. God knows the truth, but before we can build our lives and affairs around it, we ourselves must know it. Even though everything seems to be against us, we must be able to say from the center of our consciousness, these things do not matter a whit, for they are not true of God. God will shine through them and dissolve them as sunlight dissolves shadows. God is in charge in His realm of spirit, and nothing can stand against Him. My trust is in God. He will tell me in plenty of time that I and my human self should do. The trouble with most people when they pray is that they give more attention to their needs and their limitations than to God, and this is bearing false witness. They want God to set them free in the outer world without first setting them free in the inner world, and this cannot be done. Seek ye first the kingdom of God. The inner, spiritual world comes first, because it is there that we receive power to rule the outer. In an article, Remaking Our World, Imelda Octavio Shanklin said, "The power by which we act upon the spiritual creation is the same power by which creation came. The power is the Word. The spiritual creation never changes, being the form of God's immutable Word. Our world continually is changing, being made in the form of our fickle words. Our world is constituted of all that we hold in consciousness, and words react upon consciousness. When we speak of new word, our world is changed somewhat. If we reiterate the new word, the change is strengthened. A new word may have the power radically to change our world, to change it constantly, but the making of our world rarely is instantaneous. Our mind swings from the good that we hope to manifest, and again contemplates the non-good which we hope to expel from our midst. The measure of our belief is indicated by the effect of the recreating word, God said, and it was so. Do you now see the importance of this commandment? It means that we dare not give power to distressing conditions in the outer world when we are trying to get a right, subjective recognition in the inner world. God cannot forgive us if we believe more in the power of evil than in the power of good. Neither can He relieve our distress if we believe more in them than we do in Him, if we keep our minds filled with our troubles. Thou shalt not covet. We break the 10th commandment by being discontented and selfish, in magnifying our misfortunes rather than our blessings, and by being envious and covetous of what others have. Contentment is not a state of having, but of being. It has nothing to do with one's physical possessions, nor the lack of them. It comes to rich and poor alike, and grows out of a harmonious and balanced state of mind. The contented person neither envies nor covets. He appreciates what he himself possesses and seeks to better his condition. He does not find fault with things as they are, but promotes improvement. Knowing that better things are on the way, he acknowledges the good he already has and enjoys it. He is content with the present, but builds more lofty mountains for the future. The covetous, on the other hand, is a lazy person. He has not taken possession of his own and does not get more because he is not grateful for what he has. Without gratitude, he cannot contact the source. The most pressing problem as practical religion is that of getting people to stand upon their own centers, to be self-reliant, self-maintained, self-governed, to raise their minds to a new level of consciousness, and to get them to trust that consciousness for everything they need. Since we are all heirs to the same power and the same mind which was also in Christ Jesus, there is no reason why we should ever envy or covet or look to others for good. In God consciousness, we not only are the masters of our destiny, but we have the power to transform ourselves and our world and to get anything we need. St. Paul said, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." As we relate ourselves constructively to the creative power, we shall attract the good things in abundance. Jesus said, "Think not that I come to destroy the law or the prophets. I am not come to destroy, but to fulfill." All divine laws can be fulfilled in our lives by strict obedience to them. They were given for our benefit and not for our restriction. It is impossible to break the laws of God, but we can break ourselves by trying to live outside of them. It is Christ or chaos for every man. It is liberty under law or bondage outside of law, and every man must choose which course he will take.